The budget process is underway, but are there ways for the state to save money? I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast, a local edition. With me this hour is New Jersey State Senator Jeff Andrew. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's always great to be with you, Jill. Thanks for having me.
It is a very challenging budget year from the state perspective and for municipalities across the state. But you say there are ways where we can look at this budget and find ways to cut money from certain locations that aren't necessarily going to have a huge impact in terms of services provided to New Jersey residents.
Exactly, Jill. I think you're right. You know, we have a responsibility. People are working harder than they ever have before. They're paying more taxes, more fees, more tolls, more regulation. They can't do anymore. They really can't. It's the responsibility of government to do what it does more efficiently. You hear people in the private sector are getting laid off. They're not getting their pay raises. They're not getting the health benefits they were before. And in the public sector, there are furloughs where they're going to have 2 weeks of unpaid pay. They're not getting the increases they were supposed to. We need to look at ways to save money that don't just impact the average person and the working person, but that makes sense. And I think we have some ideas.
When we're talking about shortfalls in the billions of dollars and trying to come up with money to fund this budget process, the cost savings measures that you're talking about individually aren't a lot of money. But when you add them up, are they going to make a difference in terms of eliminating some waste from the budget?
We think that ultimately it could easily be 30 million, which is still very significant, you know, and like we were having fun before and we said $1 million here, $1 million there. Next thing you know, you're up to $1 billion.
Right?
Exactly. And you really do. You know, I mean, these numbers really do add up, and they prevent us from making some of the really onerous, draconian cuts that we don't want to make in other areas that are so important to the public. You know, last year we had the discussion about closing the state parks, and thank God we restored that. That's something that people appreciate, having the state parks. This year we're talking about not funding beach replenishment or tourism or the arts or history. People like those things. That aren't the areas I think that we should cut.
Okay, let's talk about some areas where you think things can be cut. And one is an area that you and I have talked about in the past on this program, printed materials put out by the state. What do these materials include, and how much could the state potentially save?
Millions of dollars they could save, for sure. The Office of Legislative Services, which is the official arm of government, says there's so much of it they can't even get their arms around it, but it's many millions of dollars. I can't believe it's not changed law already. I've had this bill, and I've spoken to the chairman of the committee and asked him to post it, and he's indicated that we will. It has now finally gotten through the assembly side. I think we've gotten a chance to get this one done. Every agency and authority and commission is printing all kinds of slick, glossy materials, whether it's one commission or another. They're sending it intra-agency, inter-agency, with pictures and fold-outs and calendars. It's costing a fortune, and nobody's reading it, nobody's looking at it. It doesn't do any good. It wouldn't hurt anybody not to print it. If we want to have this information, we can have it online. People can access it that way.
So you're not necessarily talking about something, for example, that would be a health brochure at a health clinic. This is more about government-to-government information.
Exactly.
That doesn't need to be necessarily one printed or two in a glossy form.
Right. Although I think we should even look at some of the other brochures we put out as well, because there may be some that are redundant where we could save.
Let's talk about empowering the comptroller. This would require the governor to get involved in the process to really find ways to cut costs throughout state government. What are some of the things that you want to address?
Yep. I think the comptroller, who has the tools to do it, and the comptroller is doing a good job, by the way, but I think we should direct him. The comptroller only does the direction that obviously the comptroller is given. I'd like to see the sole mandate that the comptroller has for a while is to really look at ways of cutting redundancy, saving money. We have legislation in that would empower the comptroller to find 10% cut costs in the bureaucracy in Trenton. That could be through energy costs. Maybe people have the heat on too high, the lights on too often. I know I work late in Trenton sometimes. I'm in my office. I leave in the evening. I know you've seen it probably sometimes. Huge buildings that are state buildings are all lit up late at night. There's ways to save money that way. There's redundancy from agency and authority, both doing the same job sometimes. Ways to save money as well.
Well, please come back and give us an update as this budget process moves forward.
We have some other ideas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been talking with New Jersey State Senator Jeff Andrew. I'm Jill Horner for Comcast Local Edition.